Good evening, everybody. It is so wonderful and blessed to see you all here with us tonight. We want to begin this conversation by grounding it in the lived experience of mass incarceration. And so I am so honored to have on this panel my heroes and sheroes, those who have been through what it means to have a family member or for themselves to go through the pain of mass incarceration. Norman Brown, Ebony Underwood, Kendia Riley, and Layla Martinez, thank you for being here. Thank you for the courage to be able to speak your truth tonight. We are honored. I want to begin by asking each of you, starting with Norman, to talk about what your own lived experience has in fact been of mass incarceration.
Well, first I would like to open and thank Google for inviting us to be able to discuss a very profound and important topic of mass incarceration. To give you a little history of myself, not long ago, I had 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. However, in July of 2015, I was given commutation, which is similar to a pardon by President Obama. I served 24 and a half years of incarceration for a nonviolent drug offense. However, my experiences of being incarcerated for that long were very dramatic. They were very educational, very heart-filling, because when you're doing time and that kind of time, what ends up happening is that you see things, you experience things that you didn't know was in yourself, and then you did not know that the human capability could be able to stand. And as you see others around you break down under this form of pressure due to draconian sentences, they fall and they crumble under pressure because injustice can breed insanity. And what happens from that is that if you're able to hold on, you don't leave that environment during that kind of time, under that kind of circumstances, without having some form of a damage cycle. And oftentimes people fail to realize the importance of what mass incarceration does, because many people go to jail already somewhat fractured due to some of our family history. So therefore, what we have to take into consideration is that mass incarceration, when you look around and you see so much hopelessness, or what it can do if you don't find some form of spirituality to keep yourself whole, if you don't watch it, you can lose your mind. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ebony Underwood. I am a creative consultant. I'm a filmmaker. I'm an advocate, and I'm also the daughter of William Underwood. My father was a very prominent music and marketing promoter in the entertainment business. And 20 years ago, he was arrested and later convicted with his first and only felony conviction to life in prison for mandatory minimum sentencing, under a mandatory minimum sentence. It was devastating for me and my 3 siblings. My father has 4 children. I am one of 2 daughters. He has 2 sons. And for us, our father was our hero. So for him to be ripped out of our lives impacted us in such a way that we, for many years, never spoke about it. We never discussed it. And we continue to be impacted. Having to travel more than 3 and 4 hours, sometimes 7, 8 hours, all around the country. Because what most people don't know is that in federal prison, there's no parole. So he's been to maybe 8 different facilities all throughout the country. And financially, it's a burden Time-wise, sometimes we gotta wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning just so that we can visit before 3 p.m. because visiting ends at 3 p.m. We only get to speak to him because he very in spurts because there's 300 minutes per month he's allotted to speak to us. And it's a lot of pain. You know, people what they don't really consider is that of the 2.2 million people that are incarcerated, over half of them are parents. And what people don't take into consideration is that their kids are suffering. It's a lot of abandonment, it's a lot of shame, it's a lot of stigma, and it's painful. And people are walking around, minor and adult children are walking around with pain, lots of pain. And they need to be healed. And we need to think of them and consider them because nobody thinks of them. And they don't want to be pitied. They just want to be recognized and supported. Thank you.
My name is Kendi Riley. I'm an advocate for children who have incarcerated parents. Both of my parents are federally incarcerated. My father, originally they were sentenced in 1999 with life sentences. My father is Daryl Riley, and he currently still has life sentence. And my mother is Sandra Rucker, and she's had her sentence reduced to 2022. But I'm the advocate for the children who don't have anything anymore, that have endured suffering to the point where it takes everything from you, and then it broadcasts you to a point where you have to make everything and fend for yourself. In 99, when my parents were both arrested and taken to federal prison, the power of attorney was given to my grandparents, and I'm currently 19 years old. So from that period on up, by the time 2012, my grandfather passed away, and then my sister passed away in last year, and then my grandmother passed away too. So at 17 years old, I was living in a house by myself, all alone, having to take care of bills, buy food for myself, not a job, or practically anything to fend for myself. And along with being a minor, I didn't have anybody else to be there for me. And along with taking care of myself, I had to take care of my parents as well. So I'm practically the person to say that the prison and federal justice system isn't looking at they're not looking at the families. They're looking at the wrongdoing of the parents, but they're not looking at the damage that can be done to individuals or the children that are associated with those incarcerated parents. And for myself, it's a little bit more difficult because I'm looked at as the exception. I'm looked at as the individual or the person whose parents have went to prison, but has still endured to go on to college and do something with my life. But there are millions of others who have taken the wrong path and have gone into something or gone astray to the point where they're not receiving education. They're following the same path that their parents have followed, or basically falling in some sort of debauchery that they're not supposed to. So I'm a child that wants to stand up and help other children, basically the people that are the natural, the norm of incarcerated parents, to become the exception that America speaks of.
Hi everyone, my name is Leila Martinez. I am a member of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls, as are them. They are members as well. I'm also the program coordinator for the Beyond the Bars Fellowship, and I am a full-time student at Columbia as well. I'm someone who's formerly incarcerated, and I became first involved with the criminal justice system in 2000 when my son's father and partner at the time was sentenced. He was arrested on conspiracy charges. So I was left alone with a 1-year-old. And a little over a year after, I made some wrong choices that led me to be arrested for 4 charges, and I was sentenced to a 1 to 3. And that was how I became involved with the criminal justice system. Yeah, I'm sorry.
What I want to surface more is how Norman and you, Layla, you were both parents behind bars. And Norman, you did over 2 decades. And so when we talk about over-criminalization of Black and brown communities, we talk about it in numbers, in policy, but we don't always understand what it means in the human costs. And so if you could just give us some space to understand, what does it mean to be serving over 2 decades, first-time felon, as a father? And if you also, Layla, can talk about what it means to be a mother behind bars, knowing that your son is out there, and what other mothers and other fathers experience in that space, because it's a way that when we talk about the injustice of mass incarceration, when we talk about the disparate over-criminalization of Black and brown communities, this is the piece that I don't think we hear enough about.
I'm sorry. So I can talk a little bit about that. First, my son's father was arrested in a federal prison, and we weren't married at the time. So to visit people in the federal prison, you have to be either related or married. So I felt like they forced me to take my 1-year-old into a prison, because the only way that they allowed me to visit was taking my son, because he was related to him by blood, and then my son couldn't go in alone, so I was able to go in, and that's the only way. Then that, I didn't appreciate that. I was forced, right? You're waiting outside in freezing, cold weather. My son has to go through this metal detector, and it was not what I wanted for my son, but this is what I had to do. Also, I was alone. I was 25, and lost my source of support with a 1-year-old, and that's really why I decided to go into the illegal ways of earning money, because I couldn't support myself. And when I was arrested, my mom had to take care of my son. And I tried to stay at Bedford Women's Facility, even though it's a maximum security. I wanted to be there because it was closer to home. Not only that, I wanted to continue my education, and in Bedford, they gave college credit courses. And I tried my darndest to stay at Bedford, but they didn't allow me to stay. They shipped me to Albion, which is 9 hours away. So I had to make the hard decision and ask my mom not to visit. Because in order for them to go, like Ebony said, they would have to leave on Friday to see me on Saturday, and they wouldn't get home until Sunday. So it was very, very, very hard, but I made that decision. And then I would call home, though. I would call all the time, which put such a financial, it was very expensive, so it put a really big burden on my mom, but that's the only way that I had a connection with my son. So I called home. And these are things that people don't think about, right? The calls, they're so expensive, and I knew I was putting that, but I was like, I'm sorry. And I had to call. I needed to make sure that my son knew that I was still in his life, that, yeah.
Well, to add on to that from a father's perspective is, there's no love, first thing, like a mother's love, and to hear her and to experience it is very traumatic in itself. Now, my daughter was not born when I was arrested in 1990. Her mother had just got pregnant 30 days before that. So I went through my whole entire incarceration trying to learn how to be a father from behind the wall. And that is a very complicated situation because of the fact that, you don't have the human touch. You all over America. You cannot help really in any way other than moral support, writing letters and things of this nature. So as she got older and older and older, I had to continue to pray just to make sure that she would recognize me or even accept me to say daddy. Because, and then when you have to wrap that around your mind and then go through all of those years and then come out of prison, you still have to ask her to see if she will still allow you to be daddy, because inside of the man's nature, he just needs to be able to play his role. And when he does not perform, and when he's unable to play his role, he has a sense of insecurity with this. And this is a sea of men that you see walking the compound when you look out and you see 1,500 men of all ethnicities looking out there, and you would ask yourself, all of them men have children and they're fatherless. So mass incarceration is raping our communities to the point where we're coming up fatherless and we don't have any guide. And this is why our communities are so infested with violence and self-hatred and so much death, because no one is teaching our children. They do not have the male perspective to grow up on. And both daughters and sons, they need this.
So Ebony and Kendia, I want to talk about the experience of the kids more. I realized that I didn't introduce myself because I was so excited to introduce you all. So I'm Malika Sadasar. I'm senior counsel here at Google on civil and human rights issues. But before I came to Google, I spent a lot of years going to women's prisons. And one of the most devastating experiences was to go to women's prisons where there was a visitation area, and to see that either the children could not touch their mothers at all, or were restricted to touching them at the beginning or the end. And so I remember one girl who wanted to just like give her mom some extra hugs, right? And was stopped. And as a new mother at the time, it was raw for me to see. And I had never thought about this part of incarceration, right? I had done all this work around maternal incarceration, but until I saw the visitation spaces in certain prisons for women, I never thought about that aspect. And so if there is something that you feel we need to know about what it is like to have your parent behind bars and how you create that connection with them despite the barriers of the prison walls.
Well, for me, it's like I focus a lot on how the prison system has changed the value of $1. Because for me, last year, I was just trying to go to college and go off and basically be a practical teenager. And when my sister passed, it was like my grandmother went into like a depression. And it basically was practically because we were her only 3 daughters in a sense. And the prison system took my mother away, and then it was like in exchange for us. And then when my sister passed away, she was taken, and then I was going off to college, so I was leaving too. So once my grandmother passed, it was like I was on my own, and practically on the brink of homelessness and starvation because I didn't have anything. I ended up having to not have a relationship with my mother, or not be capable of speaking with her or talking to her, all because I could barely find $1 for myself. Nonetheless, give her $1 for 5 or 3 minutes of a phone conversation.
Can you just explain that to people? Because some folks might not understand what you're saying. Tell us how this works.
So in order to speak with your parents while you're in prison, in a federal prison at least, they have to receive money from home. So you have to send them a certain amount of money, where telephone calls are $1 for 3 minutes, $2 gets you 5 or 7, and then 3 minutes, $3 is 15 minutes max. You only get 300 minutes allotted per month.
You only get 300 minutes.
Just 300. And then practically, once you give them the money, it's whatever money you're making. They're not considering your job or what's going on with you at home. They have to receive money from you. And then that's based off the money that you get from them. They not only use that for phone calls, to mail things home, so you need stamps, clothing, food, and stuff like that. So
yeah, they use it for the commissary. I would consider mass incarceration to be a tsunami that has catastrophically destroyed communities and ripped apart families. For my siblings and I, you know, like I said earlier, we, for many years, did not speak about this. You know, back then, of course, this conversation was not something that you even discussed. I only just recently realized there was such a thing as children of incarcerated parents. The reason why I decided to speak out is because President Obama and a former Attorney General Holder said we have to do something around criminal justice reform. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to speak out because this may be my only opportunity for my dad to come home. He is in prison because of the war on drugs. He was part of the first round of convictions made. He was not willing to participate with the prosecutor, so they basically threw him under the jail and gave him life without parole. And life without parole, you might as well have given all of us life without parole, because that's what it feels like. She doesn't have her mother or her father because of drug conspiracy charges. Drugs. Meanwhile, there's all sorts of drug companies now making millions of dollars over prescription drugs. So it's like, it does not make any sense. Why? My question is this. When does punishment become abuse? What are we correcting? It's abuse now. To me, I'm abused. I'm part of the carceral state. We're part of the carceral state. We're forming a coalition now of children because we've realized there's so many people that have been impacted that are walking around and not seeing anything and dealing with this pain. Minor and adult children walking around with this pain, never speaking about it, never knowing that there are support systems out there in place around the country. And so now we're going to talk about it. We're going to speak about it. And we're going to let people know that we're suffering. You guys are mass incarcerating people. You're mass incarcerating communities, families, children, little children that grow up and become adults. And then grandchildren who are continuing to suffer. When does punishment become abuse?
So one last question to each of you, which is that we are at this moment where at the federal level and at the state level, there's all this momentum around policy reform. How are we going to address mass incarceration? What kind of criminal justice reform can be implemented in Congress, in our legislators at the state level, to be able to change the landscape? And so I want to ask each of you, what's the one piece of legislative reform you would say must be part of, especially what's happening right now in Congress?
Well, I would like to start out saying that, we took away the parole system, which means this would give you an incentive to try to do better. Because people work off of incentives. And when you're sitting in jail and you're sitting in there saying that I don't receive anything, I don't get anything, I got all of this time, there's no reason for me to become better, I'll just sit my time out and dry rot. When you sit in there and you have something such as parole, where you can go to school, you can pick up trades, you can enlighten yourself, you can educate yourself, so that when you get out, you will be rewarded for an earlier release date based upon your good behavior. People need incentives. And when they get incentives, they will strive higher. So I think that if I could have a voice to say anything, I think that there are many great men and women that I left behind that are a part of me. because that was a large part of my life. And to get parole for them because they have changed. Maybe not all, but I'm in no position to judge. However, there are many that can help us solve our problems if they were just given another chance.
That's right. Come on. Come on.
I would like to say the lack of retroactivity. My father's been incarcerated for all these years, and every single law that was used to keep him in prison has now been overturned and overruled and deemed unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court. However, because there is no retroactivity with these laws, my father, as my brother Anthony so eloquently always states, it's like telling a slave, yes, your children and your grandchildren are free, but no, you have to remain a slave. So my father just sits there in legal limbo. Her father, her parents just sit there in legal limbo because the laws are not made retroactive and they don't apply to old cases. What is that? What is punishment? What is that?
So I think for me it would be sentence reductions and release, or ability to like compassionate releases and stuff like that, where they need to focus more on the families and focus on what and how it's affecting the actual incarcerated person. Like for situations like myself, why allow my mother and father to still be incarcerated without even contemplating what could become of me if I'm laying on the street with nowhere to go or nothing to eat or anybody to contact or call? I'm not capable of calling them. Why isn't someone stepping in and saying, both of your parents have passed, you've lost one of your daughters, how is your other daughter? Who is caring for her? I feel like there should be a level where the justice system has to stop and think and say, okay, we're not just affecting her, we're traumatizing her daughter at this point. So.
For me, I'm a real big advocate for education. In 1994, the crime bill took away the Pell Grants from prisons, and that's the one thing that demonstrates that it reduces recidivism rates. So why would you take away the one thing where you're actually supposed to be, rehabilitating, and it's a correctional facility, right? You're supposed to give people an education and allow them to have. So I would definitely change that and bring the Pell Grants back, not only for the people when they're incarcerated, but also facilitate education when we come home, have more flexibility, take away the box from the applications. The government just recently released guidance asking schools of higher education to take away the question asking criminal history. It's called Beyond the Box, where they actually used my story as a student spotlight on the guidance. So I would just really focus on education, because I think that's a big structural issue that is one of the reasons why we have mass incarceration, and people don't think of that, right? There's structural issues that are leading to mass incarceration: poverty, health, education. So my big thing is education.
One of my favorite books is Beloved, because what Toni Morrison does in Beloved is to show that despite enslavement, there is still the resilient insistence on love and humanity and dignity. And why I'm so honored by each of you is because you show us that despite mass incarceration, the pain that has been caused, what has been denied, you insist and you are living lives of incredible dignity and strength and grace. And I am so grateful for you to be able to share that with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we want to be able to share with you now this amazing effort that Google did in partnership with YouTube and NGOs all over the country called Love Letters. And Love Letters are these beautiful love letters from children of the incarcerated to their mothers for Mother's Day. And we are just getting ready to show love letters for Father's Day as well. We worked with organizations in New York like Osborne and Our Children, in California with Pops for Club and Place for Grace. And it's been a wonderful opportunity to have that kind of partnership and give voice to children of the incarcerated. So the Father's Day love letters will be coming out on Thursday. And we want to show you what we did for Mother's Day. And before we take a look at it, I want to give thanks to Ebony, who helped us to put this together. Thank you. And I want to give thanks to Michael Skolnick, who is somewhere in the audience, who did the amazing job of pulling it together as well, and the filming. All of this really stands on the shoulders of some magnificent folks.
We're so lucky to spend Mother's Day together, but there are hundreds of thousands of kids whose moms are incarcerated this Mother's Day.
So we wanted some kids to share letters that they wrote to their moms. Dear Mom, hi Mom, I miss you very much.
I know I don't write you a lot, but this letter right here is actually pretty special.
Your second Mother's Day away. I took to Facebook and posted. I love my mother.
But most of all, I miss your love. I miss your hug.
Every Mother's Day, I listen to all of our favorite songs.
I think about you all the time. At night, when I'm getting ready to go to bed, it makes me think of the most amazing mom that I have. I miss playing with you and sleeping with you at night.
And it's just Mom, I miss how you always used to say funny things on Facebook and post that. I miss how you used to walk. You can't do it.
I've been having some personality issues. By that I mean my sexuality. And I wish you weren't in prison so you could be here to help me with it.
School is kind of good, but fighting in school is difficult.
Recently, I was inducted for the National Honor Society at my school.
Something good that's happened to me recently is that I went roller skating.
Mom, I love riding bikes because I just love riding them.
Dear Mom, I will always love you no matter what happens.
And I can't